Move on now to a frightening practice, a story about a practice that most parents and many doctors don't know about. Many newborn babies have been operated on without the benefit of anesthesia. And Channel 4's Dr. Bruce Hensel is here now with the first of a 5-part series on babies in pain.
Frightening is right, Linda. You know, most people won't even have a tooth pulled without first getting a shot of Novocaine. Can you imagine being operated on, having major surgery without any painkillers or any anesthesia? That's exactly what's happened to many premature and critically ill infants. And despite new evidence which suggests that the reasons for withholding the anesthesia in the first place have probably been wrong all along, it's still happening. We're going to show you why and what you can do to prevent it from happening to your child.
When they found out that the baby hadn't been anesthetized, they went crazy.
Laboratory animals have more protections against inhumane care than infants in intensive care nurseries.
They come into the world too soon. They come into the world critically ill. Surgery is often their only chance for survival. The child behind me is undergoing major surgery. She's been anesthetized, so she can't feel the cut of the blade or the pressure of the clamps. But when she was a baby, she had to undergo major surgery on her chest without the benefit of anesthesia.
It frightens me. All I can think about is the pain that my little girl went through. She cried upon getting needles poked in her, and I know for a fact that cutting into the chest and inserting those tubes was very painful, and I felt that she should have been under anesthesia.
But she wasn't. Mrs. Abbott had signed forms which gave consent for anesthesia, but she didn't realize that the doctors might choose to withhold it. She was not alone. Jill Lawson didn't find out that her son Jeffrey had been operated on without anesthesia until weeks after his operation.
I had been promised before I signed consent papers that he would be given general anesthesia for the whole procedure. That was the only basis on which I signed the papers. And what happened was I went back later and checked the medical records and found out what had actually happened.
Little Jeffrey had taken a sudden turn for the worse in the operating room. This forced his doctors to withhold the anesthesia, a decision, Jill soon learned, which was in keeping with the common medical practices.
About 70% of newborn infants were being subjected to surgery at that time with minimal anesthesia using the so-called Liverpool technique of anesthesia, which is basically lots of muscle relaxants to paralyze the baby.
Muscle relaxants like Pavulon couldn't deaden the pain as anesthesia would, but they could keep the infant from moving during delicate surgery. And many doctors believed that withholding anesthesia from a critically ill baby was in that baby's best interest.
I think there was a great fear on the part of the anesthesiologist that the use of anesthesia would worsen an already fragile condition.
That fear came from a time when most critically ill babies died quickly. But more and more of them are making it through those first tough days. And newer evidence has suggested that anesthesia may actually decrease the risk of surgery, which is why the experts are so frustrated that the old practices still have not died.
I think there are probably some anesthesiologists who are taking children to the operating room and not providing anesthesia.
Experts estimate that more than 2,000 critically ill infants are operated on without anesthesia each year. For Candy Wrench, whose baby has spent the first few months of her life in the intensive care unit, the prospects of that happening to her are terrifying.
I wouldn't like it. It would be too much pain for her to go through. She's had enough pain and suffering. She wouldn't need that added to it.
Candy's feelings are shared by parents and health professionals alike. They're shocked the first time they hear the facts. Many doctors don't even know about it. They wonder how it's possible that it's gone on so long, why it's still going on. Tomorrow night, we'll begin to answer those questions when we take a close look at the doctor's explanation for operating without anesthesia. Linda?
But in the meantime, Bruce, what can parents do that fear having their babies undergo surgery?
Yeah, it's
and
a real frightening
What should they
possibility.
do?
Well, what they can do is they can make sure they know what their doctor's practices are, what the hospital's practices are, and talk to their doctor about it before. And we're going to tell them about, later in the week, we're going to talk about informed consent and what they can do to make sure their babies are taken care of under the things that we know now, the most up-to-date scientific evidence. Right. We'll give that to you.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Bruce.
Well, coming up, we have...
For people whose previous ligament repairs had failed.
No one knows how long it will last.
Today, failure rate so far is running about 2%, which is actually very good. So the Gore-Tex is quite promising, but doctors want to wait just a little longer to see if it stands the test of time. By the way, I'm going back to get my own knee examined Friday, but I'm not really a candidate for Gore-Tex. We may have some other things done to it. Doctor said my problem is I keep bending my knee when I twist it to put my foot in my mouth, which I do frequently, as you know.
Yeah, I can see how that's going to
That's
act
right.
up. Listen, what about people now? You say Gore-Tex is fine for some people, but what's the procedure for people who have ligament problems now?
Okay, it's approved only for people who have already had an operation that's failed. I mentioned it briefly, but the operation involves usually taking a tendon out of your leg, using that to replace the ligament. The problem with that is it's major surgery. Tendons aren't ligaments. They can stretch out too, so you've gone through the operation, then everything is stretched, and that's why they like the Gore-Tex, and they're looking at it. And yeah, so we'll be back in 5 years, okay? Just renew my contract and we'll be back in 5 years, let you know.
All right, thanks a lot, Steve. All right, coming up here in the next half hour, got an income tax question. Well, beware if you get the answer from the IRS.
Also, the ads say soup is good food. David Horowitz reports a consumer group says it isn't necessarily so.
And Dr. Bruce Hensel explains why so many surgeons think it's okay to operate on babies without giving them anesthetic.
Coming up.
I should have gone to Circuit City.
Circuit City's highly trained staff is dedicated to giving you the right advice. Circuit City, the intelligent choice.
Just the thought of major surgery without anesthetic is frightening, and yet it is apparently being performed routinely on babies. Channel 4's Dr. Bruce Hensel has investigated this practice and joins us again today for part 2 of his series, Babies in Pain. Bruce.
It's really an incredible story. A lot of doctors don't even know about it. It's amazing. You know, it is a fact that many premature and critically ill infants have been operated on without any painkillers, without any anesthesia. The practice began centuries ago when few such infants lived even a few days. But today many do survive, and many need major surgery to repair their immature heart and lungs. The doctors who operate on them without anesthesia insist that they have the best of intentions. Their explanation about that is the subject of tonight's report. I want to warn you before you watch, the subject and the tape are powerful and frightening.
See, muscle that. Big blow.
Little Jackie Abbott is getting anesthesia so that it won't hurt when the doctor operates to remove her tonsils. She's a little frightened, but nowhere near as frightened as the mother whose baby died while being operated on without anesthesia.
The whole point of
her lawyer consented to this interview, but she requested anonymity so she wouldn't prejudice her client's case.
It had been an abdominal exploratory operation with no anesthesia, and the cardiac arrest occurred. Extraordinary measures were taken, and it's a ghastly, ghastly thing for them to consider having happened to their child.
Doctors who defend the practice insist they have a rationale. They point out that in the past, few critically ill infants survived more than a few days. Now that medicine can keep them alive, they require many life-saving procedures and surgeries. The decision to withhold anesthesia, they say, is in the baby's best interest.
There was an increased risk to undergoing an anesthetic if you were a very small infant or a very premature infant. In large measure, I'd like to believe that it was well-intentioned, that the hope was that the child would survive the procedure, and that goal being achieved, it would justify the unfortunate inability to administer an anesthetic.
The belief that anesthesia might have endangered this little miracle's ability to survive may have justified withholding anesthesia during surgery. But what about the pain she felt while doctors worked to save her life?
Very early studies have indicated that babies don't respond to pain in a very specific sort of manner. Well, people, because of studies like that, thought that babies may not feel pain the same way as older children or adults do. They also felt that babies may not be able to interpret pain in a similar manner as adults, since they do not have a memory of pain as such.
The belief that an immature nervous system couldn't perceive pain was not based on hard scientific fact, but it allowed those who believed that anesthesia was dangerous to do what they felt was safest for the baby.
At that time, it was convenient, clinically convenient, to believe that, or to assume that babies don't feel pain, and that practice seems to have continued.
The fact that it's continued is making the experts re-examine the rationale for withholding anesthesia. There's new evidence about the safety of anesthetics, and parents who have been or will be affected continue to wonder.
The surgeon says that it probably didn't cause him much, if any, pain, and I hope he's right.
Helen shares those hopes with tens of thousands of parents whose babies have been operated on without painkillers and anesthesia. They believe that the doctors act in good faith, but their instincts tell them that their babies can feel pain, that the doctors are just anesthetizing their own ears so that they won't hear the baby's cries when they operate. Tomorrow night, we'll show you why the doctors continue to act as they did, and the new evidence which proved that the babies could not only feel pain, but that the pain might actually increase the dangers of surgery. John, Linda?
Bruce, you mentioned that the doctors say that one of the reasons they didn't want to give anesthetics was because they felt the babies would die. Why would they die?
Well, these premature and critically ill infants are already very fragile, and we do know that anesthesia does have its dangers, so the doctors didn't want to increase the danger. There really was the best of intentions when they started out. The point is that we now have evidence that anesthesia can decrease the dangers, and that's what we'll talk about later this week.
All right.
It's really incredible.
Thank you. Yes, it is.
Bruce.